Welcome everybody to our, well, what is this, like our 6th or 7th episode of Community Chat? I lost track a long time ago. But Community Chat is the Center for Community Engagement's online monthly Zoom show where we share the good work happening in our community and introduce our students to critical issues affecting our Spokane community. I'm your host, Anthony Medina, as always, joined by some of our wonderful community partners. I wanted to share that our Community Chat, as it's been going on for almost a year now, Molly, which is crazy. It's coming up on a year. We have broken the Zoom servers multiple times, destroyed the numbers. Our fan base is growing every day. And so if you want to be a part of this community chat, we welcome you in, as always, to join us. If you can't join us here live, hopefully you're joining us out on YouTube and engaging with us that way. But look out for future episodes of Community Chat. Today's episode is going to be about our Northeast neighbors. We're connected here with some really wonderful community leaders, community residents of Northeast Spokane, who will be sharing a little bit about the assets, the challenges facing our community, and what that implies for leadership in our community. We're joined here also by our Orgel students today in the Create, Imagine, and Lead class. And so they're going to be here asking some wonderful questions, and we thank you all for joining us. Without further ado, I want to keep going on and on. We'll turn it over to our community partners. And so thank you all for joining us, Lindsay, Natalia, and Luke. We wanted to start off with some introductions. And so I don't want to introduce you, I'll let you introduce yourselves. If we can go, let's go Lindsay, Natalia, and then Luke. Briefly about yourself and how you're engaged in Northeast Spokane.
All right. Well, first of all, happy Saturday, everybody. And thanks for having me here again, Anthony. Well, my name's Lindsay Shaw, and somehow I ended up being the chair of the Logan neighborhood, but I think it has something to do with my passion. I see a lot of room for just ways that our community can be lifted up a little bit, and just maybe like I call it the juge. Anyways, I moved away for a long time and came back to Spokane and just saw lots of potential for change that could, simple changes, maybe expensive changes, but it could make a huge impact on our neighborhood. So yeah, I am a mom of 2 boys and I'm happy to be here.
Hi guys, I am Natalia Gutierrez, not born in Spokane, born in San Diego, California, moved here about 18 years ago, and had little ones that turned into teenagers and learned that teenagers are a lot harder than toddlers, but that's just my opinion. And so during that struggle of not even thinking about what was going on within myself and my past and all that, my 16-year-old son, well, 14 at the time, went missing. And that really brought up a lot of things for me and what do you do? Does anybody ever think about, like, what does a mother do when a kid goes missing? And then things just come up about yourself. So it was a big learning process for me. He's found, he is safe, and he's upstairs. Thank God, right? But it was a long 6 months. And in that, I created a nonprofit for at-risk youth, trying to think of, like, what would my kid be into? What would I be into if I was an at-risk kid myself in the foster system and my parents were murdered at 12 years old? So you see how it kind of like bounces back to your own past when you're going through these things in your own future. So here I am. Started If You Could Save Just One, which works with 10 to 21-year-olds, special needs, at-risk, juvenile hall kids, suspended kids. And right now, since COVID, we've created things that are project in a bag. Since we can't have them in person, we now deliver projects to kids' homes in person to do within themselves or with family or friends. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Go ahead, Luke.
Thank you. Well, so I was born and raised here in Spokane, in Northeast Spokane specifically. Actually, my dad always said we were Hilliardites, though I found out that we grew up right off of Francis in Nevada, which isn't technically Hilliard at all, historically or anything. But that speaks to kind of the mentality of, everything in the Northeast can be sort of Hilliardish depending on the situation. Went off to college, thought I wanted to be an engineer, was totally wrong about that. Wanted to work in human services, as it turned out, and found out that along the way. Went back and worked in a small family business here in East Hilliard, where we actually did work, and found myself very, very much wanting that community that I had in college. And so tapped into what community we had here. I got very, very involved with the Hilliard neighborhood, from the Hilliard Festival to the Business Association to the Neighborhood Council, which is where I stayed. I've been involved with the Hilliard Neighborhood Council for, I think, 16 or 17 years, something like that. It doesn't seem real, but it's been forever. And through that, got involved with a lot of city level stuff, a lot of community development and business development, community engagement, community organizing eventually, and eventually found out that was where my passion lies, is really in working with nonprofits and leadership development. And I now currently work for the Arc of Spokane. I'm the director of community engaged programs there. And so a lot of our programs that go out into the community and help people build inclusion, both for the individuals and for the community, are under my purview, which is my favorite thing in the world, really, other than my kiddo. And I'm super scared that Natalia says that it's much harder to have a teenager than a 5-year-old, because there are days where she defeats both of us and the dog and the cat, I think. So we're in a lot of trouble, but look forward to it, and hopefully can, steer that to the positive is my hope.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Lindsay. And if I'm not mistaken, Natalia, is if you could just save one, is that in the Bemis neighborhood technically?
Rogers High School. Bemis
Okay.
isn't far. Yes, we're close. We're only 2 blocks away from Rogers and about 4 or 5 blocks away from Gary Middle School.
Cool. Luke, is that technically Hilliard, or is that Bemis?
Nevada
Yeah.
Heights.
Nevada Heights?
Heights,
Nevada Heights.
yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And then Lindsay, you work with Logan neighborhood. Luke, you work with a bunch of different neighborhoods. And so the greater Hilliard areas. And so really cool representation here today of like the different neighborhoods we showed you on that map. But I wanted to get into a few things, and I think I'm going to combine questions 2 and 3 for y'all, if that's okay. So our first question is going to be, could you share some of the strengths and assets you see in your community, as well as some of the challenges and difficulties? I'm putting these together because I want to leave some more room for our students to ask some questions. But strengths and assets, what do you love about Northeast Spokane, and particularly your communities? And what are some challenges, some difficulties you're seeing in your community? And we can start however you'd like. Let's go organically this time.
I like to go first because then I forget what I'm going to say, guys. Okay, let me go first. I'm going to say the strengths. As I'm getting older versus when I first came here and I was like 18 years old. And so the clubs were really what I was looking for, right? You know what I mean? What hot clubs where I can dance with my friends and meet guys. And so that is totally different now, because I never would want to go into a club now anymore, because yeah, I've learned a lot. Anyway, so now so much is who I surround myself with. Starting the nonprofit. I know that's kind of like, so what I'm trying to say right now is like there's 2 different, when you start into the community. So what I'm saying is like I came into your guys' community from California. So not knowing a lot of people, got myself into more trouble. Coffee almost spilled. And then I grew out of that. And then I started meeting a lot of great women, because what was going on in my life wasn't really healthy anymore. Going to the club that's not where you want to meet your husband. But hey, maybe you met your husband there, and no shade on that. So what I would say a huge strength for me, what I'm recognizing in my neighborhood is just sometimes when we go through struggle, we meet other people with struggle. And then that brings us kind of together and unites us. I hope my camera's not cutting out. Am I doing okay? Okay. So when my son went missing, I met so many other parents in general that had kids that went missing, which I never really thought I would meet other people that had kids that went missing. You know what I mean? So in that, I started putting myself into a lot of meetings on just trying to navigate what was in the community. And then I met even more amazing people. So you can see how things just kind of went for me on, and I would say that would be the biggest strength is there are a lot of awesome people that come from all over the place in Spokane. And that is what I've been recognizing for the past like 5 years, all these amazing people that either come from here or move here. And we all have struggles and different stories. The ones that are open enough, which I know is scary to tell our stories. But when we get over that hurdle, I haven't had coffee, you guys, yet. It unites us. But the downfall, I would say, what I've learned in that 15 years of having toddlers and teenagers is there was the same things to do in the neighborhood, which was like those festivals we have that have the same vendors every single time. So when you take a toddler, you're usually just feeding them to eat or hoping that there's live music. So that was really it, being poor, you can't really afford all that food, but you can't afford to listen to the music. And then your toddlers really want to do hands-on things. So that was really a big struggle for me in the neighborhood. And even going out of the neighborhood and into different neighborhoods, it was the same thing always happening. So as I started the nonprofit, you could see how I was trying to think of what could be different for these kids. So I bought turntables, DJing, breakdancing classes. You know what I mean? Like I started looking for my own kid to start doing those things because as he's watching social media and all the kids around him, these other things are cooler versus going with mommy to an event at the park and eating a hot dog because that's all I could afford. You know what I mean? So does that make sense? Those were the positives and those were the like, what else is in there? Because in big cities, there's a lot more to do. Not that this isn't a big city, but it's, half the size of some of our cities. So, so really grasping what kids are into is what I saw the downfall for my community, that there wasn't much that when teenagers turn into teenagers, they really want that YouTube video of the guy falling on his face and does that make sense? All right, hopefully. I'm going to drink my coffee now. You go next.
Thank you, Natalia.
May I go? All right. Strengths, I think that we're very scrappy in Northeast, that we kind of wrap our arms around each other a little bit, and that we're, like Natalia was saying, we can relate to each other. Maybe because we're not, we don't have $500,000 homes. So we kind of have like this base relatability to one another, I think. So it's easy to be a neighbor here. Some of the and potential, I think that's an asset. I think the potential is an asset. For challenges right now, I see a big thing is a plan for housing, just because of all of the homelessness and the homeless camps that are coming this direction. And it just seems like it's only going to become a bigger problem. And I hope that our city leaders can come up with some kind of plan for solution. And I'm sorry, I wrote everything down. Now I'm drawing a blank. I also see like the west side of our city really doing a great job of upgrading, where Northeast, other than the Market Street upgrade, is kind of like just kind of forgotten. And I feel like that's because there's not a lot of people to advocate for it. We're all busy trying to make ends meet, trying to meet needs, just trying to basic needs, just trying to survive. So that's an issue. Also, I think that aligning together to make those improvements has been difficult. I guess the right way to put it is to de-silo and to work together. But I have a feeling we're getting closer. So maybe it will take 5 more years or 10 more years, but I think we're getting closer. And someone had asked me a question in the chat about my ideas for change in the Logan neighborhood and how much money it will require. What changes are you planning and how are you raising that money? I'm not raising the money, but I'm looking at a community improvement district situation or a business improvement district along Hamilton. I'm also looking, I actually have, I think somebody from Gonzaga is looking at doing like a TIF in Logan. And I have so many ideas. I could take up this whole time, but couple, like just to run through, is like a multi-use path along Illinois. There's a bluff that has a beautiful view. I've seen a man carry his own folding chair to sit there and enjoy the view. And I'm like, why don't we have a bench? Why can't I rollerblade back and forth there with my children? It's over a mile, I think, and it would be a great, safe place to have activity. We have the first Greenway in Logan. It's on Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Greenway kind of goes up through campus, and I think that we can do better with placemaking. So when you're on that, whether you're walking or scootering or bicycling or wheelchairing or however, that you can see, oh, this is where Arctos is, we should turn here, or this is where De Leon is, we should turn here, because we should support our local businesses and just make it more user-friendly. The neighborhood anyways. Another idea that I have is just, and I think that it's something that we've been talking about in the neighborhood for a long time, is along the Centennial Trail. Once you go over the Hamilton walking bridge, it kind of, it looks a little desolate. So the rest of our Centennial Trail through our city is very beautiful and has been uplifted a lot. So just trying to advocate for those same upgrades and beautification along the Centennial Trail in Logan. And it's, I think that another, sorry, I'm tangenting, but I know that we have a lot of diversity in our neighborhood, and mostly I would like to see everyone still feel welcome here, but just it feel more safe for everyone who lives here and user-friendly.
Thank you, Lindsay. Luke?
Okay, you guys have amazing questions, so I'm going to go relatively quickly. I actually, maybe next time, just want to answer in the chat. This is awesome. So for me, I think the answer to both questions is resilience. We've had to be resilient to survive a lot for literally over 100 years. You know, our neighborhood has had multiple different, or our whole section of the city has had multiple different major job creators, like the railroads, like Kaiser, like even the military industrial complex after World War II, that kind of thing. And they've all gone away. They've all, for various reasons, gone away. And we've survived anyway. We figured it out. And the really cool thing about that for me is it's brought people together, and it's raised up people and voices that otherwise wouldn't be. If you look at the history of Northeast and Hilliard especially, there are very strong female leaders, which I think is amazing. I think one of the things that we're talking about right now a lot is a lot more of our communities from outside the United States that have come to Washington and Spokane in the US, and how they are being resilient because of their interdependence and how they work well together. And I think the thing that has been moving in the last 5 to 10 years a lot has been our BIPOC leadership, and a lot more, you know, not just old white dudes running everything. We're trying to get away from that, and I see a lot more of that. I think one of the really interesting things about this that I thought of while you guys were speaking, in the work that I do, a lot of folks who are in human services, that term, I don't see color, is pretty common, right? Because they don't have prejudice in their heart so much, but they also don't understand how whitewashing that is and what that does. And so I never was really introduced to that term going to Rogers and growing up where I grew up, even though we were still very white. I mean, it was 90+% white. The idea that I don't see color isn't a thing. I mean, some of my best friends if I'd ever said that, would have slapped me. You know, it doesn't make any sense because of identity. So I think what this is all growing into now is more teamwork and more collaboration. And like Lindsay said, it's hard. It doesn't naturally come to any of us because we want to hunker down and fight things on our own. But what we've learned and are learning is, you know, teaming up against the common enemy or for common good is what's most effective. And I think the younger generation of leadership, if I can still call myself that at over 40, we are seeing that differently than, you know, the previous generation that I came up with in this, that are now in their 60s, you know, is much more about putting up walls in those silos. And so I love that we're working together. I love that, you know, Lindsay and I are friends outside of our neighborhood stuff, and actually were before she got involved in neighborhood stuff, which is super awesome, which maybe speaks to one of the questions about how you get involved. But I'll let Anthony run the meeting and decide where we go from here.
No, Luke, that's great. And I see there's a question for Natalia. You want to jump in there, Natalia, and then we can go to the next one. And Luke, maybe you can jump us off with that because you answered in the chat. So Natalia, if you saw the question in the chat, please feel free.
I did. I love the question. These are great questions. I'm excited for great questions. So how do I identify, you know, I worried about that. Like, how would I do that in the beginning, you know, but I didn't really have to, because where I was located on Wellesley in Nevada, almost, but 3 blocks south from Wellesley, I got people just walking up to the building that I got. It's actually donated from the church across the street. And so they let us use it. And so when decorating it, people just come walking up, and some of them start talking, and then you can see where they're at when they're talking. Another example is letters. I get letters and emails, and we do like, if you're surveys sometimes. I try not to push surveys too much because everybody else is doing surveys. But in these questions, the kids are already just in one sentence saying, let's say Santa Claus, you know, I really would love to see Santa Claus this year. I get bullied at school. I would love a train truck. My mother got hit last night. Pretty interesting how things are just coming out without me having, well, obviously we advertise for at-risk youth, but the projects in the bag, if we ask them to say, how did your project in the bag go? Or do you have any ideas? In those letters and emails are so much underlined abuse that's going on behind closed doors. So for me, how am I identifying that? Through them. They're coming to me. So I've been lucky in that. So I'm not lucky because I don't want any kid to be abused, but I'm lucky to be able to say, okay, that kid needs a little bit more attention. Not that this kid doesn't, but this one is more eager to talk about it. When we did like a Santa letter, and before you know it, there's like all this stuff going on in that person's life. I gotta say, just for myself and my own organization, that has been it's just been a flock to us. Like, and I think that honestly, when we started doing DJ lessons, breakdancing lessons, you know, I was trying to navigate what my community in this community, not my California community, what in my community here were the more data. I know that's kind of like, you know, data, but I really did watch the data. You know, how many kids were getting into physical fights at Rogers last year? Well, obviously none, because nobody was going, but the year before that, you know what I mean? How many special needs kids were going into juvenile hall? 30% for all that. So, you know, I was just kind of trying to feel out what Hilliard, what Nevada Heights was really into, so I can identify what projects would be the neon lights for them to go towards. And then, okay, now they start just vomiting out of the mouth of what's going on. And a lot of the parents, when you say identifying, some of the parents will ask in the questionnaires, when you get a project in a bag, do you feel like your family's struggling? They'll say no, but in this next sentence, they'll say, but we need money for rent and our electricity is going to be turned off. So it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, well, they don't feel that they're struggling, but you're telling me that you need money because you're about to be evicted and your electricity is going to be out. So what makes somebody an at risk? You know what I mean? Because if you're struggling to pay your rent, that pressure on you is definitely going to your kid, right? Because you're reaching out. So that's just my observation. And then you said the biggest advice, oh, on your mission. I'm not good at that word. I suck at spelling. But read that question to me, Anthony. Exhibit.
Which one is that, Natalia?
The second one, Jeff Johnson.
Oh, yeah. And maybe I can read this one in a second. One thing I just wanted to share real quick, Natalia, that I think is really interesting is that the question that was asked to you, all three of you have had to figure out ways to enter into the community. Maybe like you were born into the community, but like still you understand maybe how to engage yourself in the community, one. But now all three of you are also in positions that you've had to create buy-in from others and bring others into that. So I think that's really interesting, and I think gets at a little bit more of Randy's question about like where people start to get involved in the community from your perspective as people who've had to get involved in your community, right? So you've done it and are now welcoming people in. Where do people start? And then Jeff, I think that question is one of, I would like to get back to it, but I think naturally I'm seeing this connection here. If that's okay, Natalia.
Okay, no, that's okay. Talking about Randy's question.
Yeah, so for people wanting to be more engaged in their communities, where would you recommend to start?
Right. And so I'm gonna take you back. I'm gonna take you back just a little bit ago when I was like saying, what are you into? So you move here. I said I went to the clubs. You know what I mean? I was 18 years old. You know what I mean? I was partying. I didn't get to party till I was 21, really. What was my atmosphere when I moved here? So you guys live here, let's say, and you live in Gonzaga. So you're looking around Gonzaga. What is there to do? Well, there's like Jack and Dan's to go drink, and there's Wolfies to go eat. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are you into in your own community? Because that's exactly what the kids are doing once they grow up, and they're like, okay, what is there to do? Which I live across the street from a park, and I got video cameras, so I can make a slideshow for all you guys on how much drama goes on at this park, like literally. So but what I do notice is the neighbors around us, when a girl was beating up another girl, just smashing her head on this table, right? Nobody was coming out. Why? You know what I mean? Because everybody else is video cameraing all the kids, right? But eventually I was driving by and I was like, hey, oh my God, stop it. You know what I mean? But then why don't we come out? It made me resonate because now these kids know where I live. And now other things can happen. That's why we pull back on wanting to help people in the neighborhood, because we don't want to get retaliation on ourselves. So where I'm going with that is like, what are you into? Are you into helping kids that are at risk? Then you're going to find them. If you're into going to the bars, you're going to find it. You know what I mean? So if you what was the question? Sorry, I probably went off. Engaged in our communities, where would you recommend to go start? I recommend to start what you're into. Does that make sense? Like, if whatever you're into, get into that, and then research a bit, and then do data a bit, and then what makes you feel good? If you're a dancer and it makes you feel good, you're going to go where dancing is at, right?
Follow your passion.
Follow your passion. There you go.
Even if sometimes you're into art and there's a little tiny pockets of barely art, but we can still push for art, right?
And then they say, where's the gap? The gap is it's hard to find some things that you're into. If you're into country line dancing, maybe you guys know where it's at. I don't know. Now, per se, I would say, like, where like the Mexicans at? You got to go to a Mexican restaurant, right? You know what I mean? Like, So, you know what I mean? It's like, what are you into? Where can you find it? And if you can't find it, boom, you just found your niche. Now you can create it. And before you know it, like the bigger cities, like outside eating, all of a sudden Spokane realized what outside eating meant. Boom. It's a hit now, right?
Yeah, I would say both ladies are right. I mean, it's about where people come together and then building off of that. For me, it's a great story about how I ever got involved specifically in neighborhood organizations. I grew up going to the Hilliard Festival my whole life. And, back in the glory days, there was a full carnival and all those things, and then insurance requirements and things got rid of that. But when I came back to work with my family business, like I said, I kind of found myself missing the community I had in college. And so I went and I thought, you know what, I'm going to volunteer. I want to volunteer for these guys and see what I can do to help. And I reached I tried to reach out, I should say, there at the park, and I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't figure out. I totally know why that is now, because everybody's running around like a chicken with their head cut off trying to make the event happen. But my response was, why is nobody making this welcoming? Why is nobody trying to get me involved? And so I wrote this scathing email to, just hilliardfestival@yahoo.com. I had no idea who I was talking to. And the response I got back was sort of like, put your money where your mouth is. And dear sweet woman, Desi Bucknell, who's since passed, invited me in and said, come get involved. And I did, and it grew from that. And so I guess I would say exactly what they said: go to the places where people are gathering and engage with the people that are the sort of gatekeepers, the people that are the ringleaders, and try to figure out how they got involved. And though it's hard to find that person, no neighborhood person, no organizational leader is going to push you away if you say, how can I help? What can I do to get involved? That kind of thing. So that's a big part of it. And then us as leaders have to do a better job of being welcoming, because a lot of people, it's a big ask to have them come up and say, how can I help? And so we have to do a better job of reaching out and of being welcoming and allowing people, if they'd had a single volunteer to sit there and say, ask me how you can get involved, they would probably have a lot more help. And so there's that weird, chicken and egg kind of syndrome to that.
Yeah, thank you all. I do want to return to Jeff's question real quick, and I know that's been answered a little bit in the chat, but to kind of reiterate here, what are some of the inhibitors? What are the things that are barriers to helping you advance your missions? Specific types of resources or policies, something else going on?
I like that word, inhibitors. Barriers. In the beginning for me, the barriers, well, money rules everything. It's sad, but it does. I was working 3 jobs. And so the barrier for me was, gosh, you know what? All the money is going into this idea I had. And I love that your guys' group is called something with an idea, right, in it. And so really, I felt my idea, but the barriers were, well, I knew I was going into a world with most meetings of white people in them. And how are they going to perceive me? Because I'm not from here, but I knew that it doesn't matter where your kids grow up, they can find trouble anywhere. And my son was born here. And so does that make me just as much community member as them? Yes. And my son's actions that are going on in school and on the streets are hitting all those other parents. And so that is my problem. And that's like, how do I stop that? Because I don't want any parent to judge me that like I'm not trying to stop my son's behaviors. There's a lot that goes into the law that age 13 and above can refuse mental health, which is just a doozy. And then you go into the hospitals trying to get your son help because he maybe overdosed on your front door. And the people inside the hospital are like, your kid's just a brat. But you're like, whoa, I was just doing CPR on this kid. There's got to be a lot more. So those are barriers that I find that like within myself of being judged. Is this idea going to be good enough? Obviously it was, because I got 197 kids registered. Woo woo. But the barriers that I'm finding out that even though this idea has worked is that people like now with COVID, one adult has COVID, the husband, the mother doesn't. They can't afford to separate, so they have to just separate within the home. But then one's out of work, and the mom has to take care of the kids because this one has COVID. And so those are like barriers on like, but what does that really mean? If we dig a little harder, obviously it's money. People need money. And then we have organizations that do have money, but I would just run out of money if I just gave everybody money. So the mission statement for me is to build activities and resources for kids. Why? Because I want to see them succeed at whatever their passion is, whether it's school. If it's not, then maybe they're going to be a musician. Maybe they're going to be the next Santana. You know what I mean? How can I make that possible for them? So I buy a guitar, give a mentor pay the mentor to teach the person to play Santana songs. I don't, not really, but you know what I mean? It's ukulele right now. But but you never know. Might have started off with ukulele and end up being the next Santana. You know what I mean? So I mean, that's for me. My mission was, I knew for myself, I was struggling as a kid. I didn't have parents. I was in the foster system. I didn't feel like anybody believed in me. So here I had to believe into myself. I can do this. And so if I have the ability now that people are believing in me enough to give me funding, I'm going to go put that back into the community and believe into parents and children and give them things that will succeed. And sometimes that's an activity with a mentor or a caring adult, like one of you guys that have ideas and inspiration and power of like just positive environments. Before you know it, this kid is flourishing. That's just my side. Who's next?
Well, I mostly answered in the chat that essentially it's not the reason, but what I think holds a lot of us back is that community involvement. Now, what holds people back from being involved has a myriad different, answers. I also don't love mission, right? I think that, I mean, I love our mission and what we do, but I think so often it weirdly narrowly defines what we do. At the ARC, I've said since I started 7 years ago that we have a stale mission. We're using words that we don't use anymore in our mission statement anyway. And so I think what we're missing is, gosh, it's a really hard thing to put together. And of course, we're all thinking about politics and political divisiveness and that kind of stuff these days. And that has taken a toll, I would say, especially in the Northeast, where we have such an intersection with the county programs and what goes on at the county. And we have WSDOT with the North-South corridor going through. A lot of things that we thought were moving forward or that we think are building momentum don't, because of infighting and because of backstabbing, at the higher levels in Olympia and that kind of thing. So certainly there's a degree of that. And I think that kind of even speaks to, Lindsay put opportunity in the chat, and that's exactly it. There are so many amazing ideas and so many things that would make things better that even us that are dedicated to doing this get discouraged because it has taken so long. Because, to hear in one ear that we have this huge housing crisis in Spokane, we don't have nearly enough homes. And then the next article I read says they're trying to put 250 homes on Beacon Hill, and there's all these things that are hampering that. And all those things are fixable if somebody actually has that in mind. But because they're, have all these other issues and all these, like I said, who's going to be in charge and, where's the money going to come from and all those things, that gets held back. Whenever we can really focus and say, this is the problem, here's some solutions, let's try them, we get somewhere. And, I don't know if that's really answering the question effective, but I think that's what we live with every day.
Okay. Luke, sorry to correct you, but it's the North Spokane corridor. It's not going south. They can't afford to go that direction.
Thank you. Well, yeah, that's what they used to call it. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
They just bulldozed the north east low-income housing to put that there, which is kind of like one of our biggest problems, I think, is it's Hilliard, when you go on, there's groups on Facebook that's like, oh, I'm moving to Spokane soon. Where should I move? Well, don't move to Hilliard. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? It's a beautiful community. And if you guys keep telling good people not to move here, what is going to happen to us? What is going to change? Nothing's going to change because we're all frustrated that everyone's pegging us as like the problem child. I almost feel like the book or the story, The Lottery, where like there's this one person that has to be stoned. It's like that's where Spokane's stoning ground. It's like really sad and sick, and maybe I'm really twisted, but I just feel like so frustrated because I love our neighborhood. I love my neighborhood. I'm in love with my neighborhood, and I loved it before I even lived here. So how weird am I? And when I was growing up, I couldn't wait to move away from this town. And I think so many good people can't wait to move away from this town because nothing ever seems to change. It's changing. I find frustration in it. And last year I was the AmeriCorps Vista of the Zone Project, and my job was to interview youth 12 to 18 in this area and talk to them. And I heard really smart kids tell me they can't wait to move away. And I tried to encourage them to stay and make the changes so other people could want to stay here. It's the youth that we have to like really support. Natalia, your job is so cool. For you to see the impact on those kids, hello. So I just feel like if we can get over the fact that Hilliard's historically redlined, they're still being treated like the whipping post, and just rise up, be stronger together, I know we can make change here.
Mm-hmm. Wow, there's so much there. I want to get into the question around COVID. I know that's answered in the chat, but I do have a question I really want to get into before we run out of time. And so y'all have been talking about how people get involved, kind of what's needed for change, what the barriers have been. For folks who, how do I put this? When you see people come into the community, whether it's from the outside or from within, what qualities are you looking for in leaders in the community? Like if someone's going to get involved, what do you want to see from people who are getting involved? What do you not want to see? What can't you stand?
Will you ask the question one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about like leaders in the community, whether they're coming from the outside or they're coming from within the community, what do you want to see? What qualities do you want to see in leaders in the community? And what qualities do you not want to see?
I think because I've seen a lot of people come and go, there are obvious answers like, ego-driven folks don't make it very far, and the humble folks that want to learn tend to get a lot further. I think the thing that is the most heartbreaking, if this is a way to answer your question, is the passionate, incredibly well-meaning folks that really want to make a difference, but aren't able to wrap their head around how long that really takes in the systems that we have. Because practically speaking, it shouldn't, right? Like we literally could dig up streets with spoons faster than they often get done. To even start talking about repaving a street, it gets on the 6-year street plan, right? Like it's just, some of these things are horribly ridiculous. And so that's a lot of the counseling that I would give to somebody that comes to me and says, I want to get involved. What do I need to be successful? My answers are things around curiosity and humility and, drawing people in and wanting to build that way. But it's also around patience and a long-term vision and, being comfortable taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward and 1 step back, depending on the time. And then sometimes you're going to run and it's going to feel really, really good, but then you're going to run into a wall and have to find a softer wall to run through. Like all those things happen. And so that I think is one of the hardest things, and like I said, very heartbreaking, that these folks who you just want to hug and just say, I love your energy, I love what you're trying to do, but you just got to slow down. You just got to let it happen. That's kind of the biggest thing for us. Everything else can be learned, everything else can come, as long as you kind of have that open and collaborative sort of mindset. I think people can be successful.
Luke, I'm taking this personally, what you just said. May I jump into about the leaders thing? And what did I write down? Oh, I think that it doesn't matter where you're from. If you feel passionate about helping us achieve our potential, I think that we would welcome you with open arms. It might take a minute for us to really open our arms, but we will eventually welcome you. And I think that if you're available, if you're an active listener, going to meetings, just saying you're engaged. I recently got an email from one of Andy Billig's assistants saying that they want to start coming to our meetings. I'm like, yes, this is how it's supposed to happen. I've been going to meetings for like 6 years. how is this only just happening? But that's okay, it's happening, so I'm happy. And I think forward thinking about how we can work together instead of just, oh, this is my organization, or oh, we're not allowed to work together. Logan neighborhood has student housing and halfway homes. It's like so complicated. So there's got to be room for all of us. It's just figuring out how to work together.
Okay, you know, this is where I'm going to turn the train a little bit. Just going to turn it. I think that's a great question, and I'm glad that I didn't go first, although I love to go first because then I forget what I'm going to say. But for me, what I've learned, and remember, I was just a mom with a missing kid that had an idea, and then here I am, and it's been an amazing ride. And so since I'm not all of you with these college degrees, all I had was my experience. So what do I look for in a leader? Is your experience in life. There's too many of these kids over here that don't trust the school counselor that has that degree. But what they do trust is the one that comes off real, you know what I mean? With their real stories, what, you know, Josh or Courtney or Lindsay or Luke, any of you guys, whatever happened to you in your past, which brings me to, you don't just vomit what happened to you in your past, you know, but you're shooting hoops because you're into hoops. Before you know it, this kid is talking about things and you're realizing that I hooked you up with them for a reason because there was a connection there. Whatever you tell me about what's going on, what your passion is, what your experiences are in your past is how I connect that leader to lead that kid and guide that kid in the most healthiest conversation, which takes me to mental health. How do I pick a leader? If anything, people can say that they're this and that. And if I've learned that in the past month right now, yes, domestic violence was just in my life. Out of somebody that was a leader, somebody that was talked about greatly, right? Everybody wanted me to meet him. And before you know it, I'm getting domestic violence on me. Only knew him a short amount of time. So that took me to like mental health. People can say things. So really, it's go within here. I mean, obviously I had some like, oh my God, maybe it's my past and I'm insecure, you know, but you know what it was? It was really my gut saying, you know what? I think something's going on there. So I have to listen to myself. And that's going to be a trick for you guys for the rest of your lives. People are going to say things on their application or within, you know, a meeting with you, and they're going to sound freaking great. But it takes time to really know somebody, and that's tricky. Whatever programs you guys are deciding to create, you know, obviously go with references and all of that. But again, here I just went through something that it was a big leader in the community, and before you know it, he wasn't anything. He was just a violent mofo. And this is my second community meeting. So like I'm fresh into going into community meetings. I took a month off. So forgive me if I'm like, but so I'm just saying like mental health, not judge your instinct, but believe in your instinct. Go with what people are saying to a degree. Test them out. That's how I do. You know, like if somebody called me about ukulele classes, and this kid ended up being amazing with kids, and that's the tricky part is how do you put him with the kid when all you have is a resume and what people are saying, you know what I mean? So again, I'm just going to go back to your heart. If you're a good person, if you have great intentions and you're doing healthy in your life, you don't have to be doing perfect, you know what I mean? But you know how to judge that character, because if anything, kids do need people to relate to, whether it's the white kid, the Asian kid, the Mexican kid, whatever, you know, it could be opposite. It doesn't matter what nationality, but what does matter is that we have something in common interest. So that's what I look for. And even more so, where do they seem they're at mentally now? Where do I seem? Would you guys put me with your kid? After knowing me right now, would you put me around your kid? You know what I mean? Good question there, right? If you're going to hire me, whatever I sounded like on this our thing, did I sound like somebody you would hire? Go with your heart. That's all I got.
Wow, wow, wow. Natalia, thank you. Luke and Lizzie, thank you. Natalia, I always love your answers. They're just so like from the heart. Love it. All of you guys, it's amazing. One thing that I'm thinking about with this question is, Natalia, you mentioned like not needing, but inviting in students' experiences, these students' experiences. Like these students are from all over the country. Some of them are here in Spokane, some of them are all over the country, right? They're master's students in this Orgal program. It's really wonderful. And I think I'm struck by that question that you invited that in while your program, while I'm sure there was many hands in there, like was community led. So like one thing I think we talk about a lot in the CCE is like, yes, our students and our folks who have these degrees and these titles and this like reputation, whatever, like, yes, they bring something to the table. And how do we trust the folks in the community who know their community to lead the work, if that makes sense, you know? Like, I don't know what your program would look like, Natalia, if you had a bunch of folks from the university designing it. That might be different, probably would. And would it be as effective? I don't know. You know the students you're working with, you know? So I think like when I'm looking at Lindsay and Natalia and Luke, it's like, y'all know so much about your communities. And as somebody coming in, if you're gonna call yourself a leader, like what is our responsibility to listen and maybe get out of the way of folks, you know, and support what's already going on instead of bringing in like, I got this great idea that's completely mine and it's inflexible and it's the way forward. It's like, nah, like Natalia's got some baller ideas. Let's go with Natalia's ideas, you know, and let's like resource what's already happening instead of like saying, I got an idea that can't, it's mine. It's mine, it's mine, it's mine. It's got to happen my way, you know? It's not really a question, but just a thought that I've been feeling.
I said in the beginning when I started this nonprofit, if anybody wanted to take this idea, go ahead, because it's a lot of work. So if any of you guys want to take over, you know what I mean, and learn this stuff, by all means, you know what I mean, because it's a tough one. You have to go with your heart. You really do. You have to go with your heart every time a woman emails you about a domestic violence. I'm just another mom that is trying to navigate the resources to bring to my own community because I was going through it. So now, you know what I mean? It's like, it became bigger than what it was. It was just a small little idea. We'll do turntables and DJs and we'll just teach them music. And then it became more and more and more. Now we're doing art, fashion, cosmetology, robotics, you know, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I mean, it's just a tricky one, no matter what. I mean, I'm just saying from my perspective, is just really listening to people. And if you're in a good spot in your life, which I don't know what spot I'm in my life, but like, I just know just to be real. And I don't know what that means to every single one of you guys. I don't know what being real means to you, but for me, it means being, you know, self-aware, you know, self-aware of others, you know, so many things though, you know. Go ahead, Lindsay, you had a question. You had an answer.
I was just gonna say, I understand that like a lot of times, well, college kids come in, they spend 4 years and then they move out, and the surveying of the community, oh my gosh, like some people are just like numb to it. You can ask them because they've been surveyed so many times. But there are values to college students, especially around technology for us folks who maybe weren't so technologically advanced before trying to become a leader, especially in these days of everything's online. So I don't want college kids designing everything, but I do not mind their help and I encourage it.
I think that GU models what the answer to your question, which wasn't really a question like you said, but and both the ladies just described kind of a similar thing. The idea that we're going to have the right outlook on helping. We're going to put ourselves out there to help. We're going to find ways to be here as long as you need help. And it's going to take some time. I mean, that's something I stopped saying that in these, I've been doing these for quite a while. And the thing I always said was that, neighborhood folks are on a different schedule than college folks. College folks are on your terms, and kind of like what Lindsay was describing. And that can be hard. And it's the same reason that like us old fogies in the neighborhood councils have a hard time working with high schools and that kind of thing, because there's just a completely different time of day and a completely different schedule of the year and all that. But if you can just make yourself a part of it, if you can make the people that might need help aware that you're there, keep showing up is a big part of it. And yeah, just I love the way Anthony put it, that you're there to support, you're there to help, you're there to push up other people. The way that we put it in the work I do at the ARC, in trying to get people with developmental disabilities involved, is each individual has a unique point of view. They have unique talents, they have unique cultures, they have unique experience that's going to add to, they're going to be able to give that to whatever they're helping with, that volunteer opportunity or what have you. And so, as someone who might jump into a new experience, I think if you have that mindset that like, I have assets to offer, but I need to not put the spotlight on me. I want to just make sure that I'm doing that on the, pushing up the mission and being supportive. I think that's a big part of the trick to being successful.
Wait, can I answer this question? Do we ever,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
does your organization have a good relationship with law enforcement? Barbara, yes. How can we not? I mean, some people don't like cops. Some people don't, like parents don't want to be around them. For me, it's a choice I have to make on, okay, here, there's these people in the community that say, and there's these people in the community that are like, I have no problem with cops. Honestly, my son was missing. Who do you call? The cops. You know what I mean? My son overdosed. Who do you call? Paramedics. These are people that serve to find things that we can't find. So it's a fine line between people in the community that don't want to mess with cops, period, but we'll call them when something is broken into their car or their kid is getting beat up down the street at the park. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like doing some little activities like we do with the PAL program, or the DEA drug enforcement take back day, little things like that, you know what I mean? That just brings them a couple of cops that are, cool personalities, thank God. And, just stuff like that, because how can we not, we have to somehow have a middle ground. And I think that everybody in the universe have been talking about this united thing, that this new level of step that's going in the world, and we could fight about it. I could, but in all seriousness, if the kids are getting in trouble, they're dealing with the cops, they're dealing with the probation officers. So how do I not have a relationship? You know what I mean? Like, you got to, because then I would just be biased, and I would, I respect when, the cops had to come help me just a few weeks ago. You know what I mean? Do I not appreciate, of course, the violence that goes on, throughout our communities? Sure. But in general, how could we live in a world without anybody to call for help? You know what I mean? That's why there's so many organizations to help people, right? Because we need somebody to call for help. So, it's a tricky line. For me, it's just half of the people don't, and some of the people over here, Democrats, Republicans, Trump lovers, not Trump lovers, you know what I mean? Like, we get emails from all kinds of lovers, and it's not up to me to judge any of them. I'm just here to help, Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia. And I know Luke put in the chat, the organization that he works with, law enforcement, it's complicated, right? And I imagine for a lot of us, it might be like a lot of us working in the community, it is this complicated line, right? How do you straddle that line? I don't have that answer, but I appreciate y'all taking a whack at that. I know we're at time, so we're at 11:15. I want to wrap up. Real quick, one word from each of the panelists. What's bringing you joy recently? What's bringing you joy? One or two words. What's bringing you joy right now?
guy that waved at me and he was like, honk, honk. And I called him Pepe, right? I was like, oh, there goes Pepe. I didn't know the guy, right? And then I met this dog the next day that was named Pepe. And I hadn't seen my dog in like 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, I could find love within a dog, not anybody else, you know? So it's a weird thingy, but you know, I was just like, Pepe, really? The guy ended up leading me to the dog and I missed my dog anyway. So love, you know, like all I want is love right now and positive energy. That's me right now.
You know, hope and optimism. I have a brand new niece that's just about 2 weeks old, that hopefully is gonna, you know, have a really great impact on the world. I have a 5-year-old and her friends who are amazing, and number one, are better at dealing with COVID than any adult I know, and number two, are some of the greatest like builders of community and leadership, largely because they have amazing teachers and amazing administration. Bemis Elementary School is amazing. I absolutely love all of them, but it gives me a ton of hope. It helps fill my batteries to keep moving, that, you know, we're going to be able to hand these off to people, and they're going to do even bigger and better things with our city and our neighborhood, our community.
Camilla Harris, female vice president. Opportunity. I feel like it's palpable. I can feel it. I can taste it. I can smell it, that things are readjusting in our favor. And I know it's uncomfortable, but this is where we're at and it's exciting. So opportunities, I think, my word.
Lindsay, Natalia, Luke, man, as always, I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you for doing this. This is their 3rd round doing this. So I think maybe we'll give them a break next time around, call some other folks, but we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
I was thinking, yeah, we need to help you recruit some other folks.
Yeah, we have some other names in mind, but we love this dynamic here. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much. That's it for our episode of Community Chat. Thank y'all, and we'll see you soon.